Hi everyone, welcome to Orgo Essentials, Make Yourself Heard, Episode 2. In this episode, we'll learn about Rachel Carson, a queer organic chemist who started the environmental movement. Let's get started. Rachel Carson was born in Springdale, a small town in Pennsylvania, on May 27, 1907. She grew up with a love of nature, always playing outside near the river that intersected her town. As she grew older, this passion was reflected in her writing. She won magazine contests for her poetry and prose from a very young age, then went to Pennsylvania College for Women for English. In the middle of her education, however, she switched her major to biology. She then went on to get her master's in zoology from Johns Hopkins, graduating in 1932. After grad school, Rachel was hired into the U.S. government, specifically the Bureau of Fisheries. Here she wrote scripts for radio episodes about biology and zoology. To make enough money to get by in the Great Depression, she also wrote articles about natural history for the Baltimore Sun. After 15 years, she was the editor-in-chief of all publications for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Her responsibilities included writing pamphlets, editing scientific papers, and ensuring that all publications were factually accurate. In her free time, Rachel studied the ocean and wrote about it. Her first oceanic work was published as an article in the Atlantic Monthly in 1937, titled Undersea. 4 years later, she published the first of her sea trilogy, Under the Sea Wind. In 1952, she resigned from the government to write full-time after the wild success of her second book, The Sea Around Us. 3 years later, she published The Edge of the Sea. Her sea trilogy was successful around the nation, and Rachel soon became well known for her lyricism, the tenderness with which she described the world around her, and her knack for making complicated subjects accessible to every audience. But her most famous work was yet to come. In New England and other parts of the Northeast U.S., Rachel noticed that the birds were dying, especially after chemical pesticides were used. She was reluctant to leave behind the topic of the ocean, but she knew the nation needed a reckoning. After years of research and struggle, she published Silent Spring excerpts in the magazines Atlantic Monthly, Saturday Evening Post, and The New Yorker in 1961. Once she and her publisher saw the effect that these pieces were having, they published the entire book in 1962. The book thoroughly analyzed the usage of synthetic pesticides in the country, especially DDT, or dichloryl dimethyl trichloroethane, and the effects that such chemicals had on the environment and human health. Silent Spring was an instant bestseller. However, not everyone loved the effect that the book had. The chemical industry, mainly run by rich old men, panicked. They needed their products to be bought, not banned. Overall, $250,000 were spent to discredit Rachel, through interviews, advertisements, and more. Determined to find out the truth, President Kennedy and his Scientific Advisory Committee met with both Rachel and the chemical industry leaders. In the end, they announced that Rachel and Silent Spring were correct. The ripples continued. In 1963, Rachel testified in front of Congress to call for legislation protecting the environment and therefore human health. In 1970, the first Earth Day was held, with rallies in several major cities. Later that year, the EPA was founded. In 1972, DDT was banned. Unfortunately, Rachel did not live to see many of the impacts of her writing. She died in 1964, after fighting breast cancer for several years. By the time of her death, the cancer had spread all throughout her body. She left behind a legacy of compassion, hard work, and a determination to always do the right thing. There are several reasons why I wanted Rachel Carson to be the first organic chemist covered in this series. First of all, her courage and perseverance can inspire even those not interested in chemistry. She was a woman in STEM, at a time when most industries and professional fields were run by men. When she was being slandered and defamed by the chemical industry, she never backed down, never was afraid to tell the truth. Though she was terrified of swimming in the ocean and drowning, she managed to scuba dive once in her life, determined to get to know the ocean she loved. Keep in mind that she did this when technology was less advanced than it is today, when scuba gear was heavy and diving was dangerous. Second of all, many people aren't aware of this, but Rachel was queer. She never married a man, never gave in to societal norms and expectations. Instead, she maintained a decades-long relationship with a woman by the name of Dorothy Freeman. The two met in Maine when Dorothy welcomed Rachel, who had recently moved, to the area. They had an instant connection. Sadly, we don't know much about their relationship, as Dorothy was married and most likely had to keep any romantic actions secret from her husband. The two frequently roamed the coast of Maine together. Rachel described Dorothy as the one person who understood her fully, who knew both her mind and her heart. In the late 50s and early 60s, when Rachel was just beginning research for Silent Spring, Dorothy begged her not to go through with the project, aware that Rachel would face a nation full of criticism and hatred for her work. However, Dorothy too understood the significance of what Rachel was doing, and supported her, even while she was fighting breast cancer on one end and the chemical industry on the other. After both women passed, Dorothy's granddaughter published a book full of letters they had written to each other, entitled Always Rachel. Overall, Rachel can teach us to always persist, even when things are hard, for the causes that matter the most. This is an especially relevant message for those studying organic chemistry, where deep comprehension doesn't always come easily, and skills can take months to perfect. I hope Rachel inspires you as much as she's inspired me. That's it for this video. If you have any questions so far, feel free to email me or comment down below. The next video will be about Marie Curie, a scientist who changed the world. I'll see you then.